Travel caution tonight and urging local police across the country to watch for homegrown terror activity. This after the bloody end to two standoffs in France that played out with the whole world watching. 3 terrorists with ties to al-Qaeda now dead. But tonight, another search, this time for a female suspected jihadi. ABC's Terry Moran is on the ground with the latest on the terror in Paris.
Good evening, Juju. It's impossible to describe the trauma that the people of this city and this country went through today. They watched as the grip of terror tightened on the ordinary streets of a neighborhood in this city and on a town about 20 miles north of Paris. 3 days of terror ended for the most wanted men in France just as they began in a blaze of gunfire. SWAT teams rushing in, hostages running out and taking cover. 2 separate locations. In one, the men accused of the massacre at the Charlie Hebdo newspaper. In the other, a gunman wanted for the killing of a Paris policewoman, all now linked to al-Qaeda and all staging their last stands. It all began 9 a.m. this morning. Saeed and Sharif Kouachi were heading back towards Paris when they were intercepted at a highway roadblock, exchanging gunfire with police and then taking cover inside a small printing plant, encountering a salesman but letting him go. That salesman speaking to radio station France Info. I met one of the terrorists and I shook his hand, he said, the gunman telling him, "We don't kill civilians." Next, a standoff. Heavily armed police shutting down roads, snipers in position, residents told to shelter in place, and schools in lockdown. Terrified teachers tried to calm their students.
In the school, there are about 900 persons, and they say to us to stay in the high school and to be calm, but we can't because we are really scared.
At nearby Charles de Gaulle Airport, flight paths were rerouted. It all went on for hours. Authorities knowing all along an innocent civilian was secretly trapped inside with the brothers. Then, around 1 p.m., word of the second standoff in Paris. A man armed with automatic weapons entering the busy grocery store holding hostages. Police identify him as Amadi Koulibaly. The world now watched as these 2 standoffs played out in real time. 3 p.m., back at the grocery store, Koulibaly calls into a local TV station saying he had synchronized his attack with the other terrorists. Earlier, Sharif Kouachi had spoken with the same TV station saying this: "We are defenders of the Prophet," and claiming he had been commissioned by al-Qaeda in Yemen and trained by the U.S. cleric Anwar al-Awlaki. Then, around 5 p.m., this. Explosions, gunfire, as the 2 brothers stormed out of the printing factory and officers returned fire.
Just moments ago, we started hearing loud gunshots, repeated sustained gunshots, as well as at least one large boom.
Less than 15 minutes later, 4 very loud bangs happening. Now we're hearing gunfire. The Paris standoff ending too, SWAT teams storming the grocery store. Police say by the time they arrived, they found 4 hostages already dead, and the shop lined with explosives tied to a detonator. But the nightmare isn't over yet. Tonight, police are scouring the city for Hayat Boumediene, the 26-year-old accused accomplice and girlfriend of Koulibaly. They believe she may have been inside the grocery store during the standoff and escaped among the fleeing hostages.
We don't know Koulibaly's girlfriend's role in this. We don't know if she's active in al-Qaeda, but that's why it's so important to catch her, to assess her involvement in this and what else she knows.
The survivors from both locations are counting their blessings.
One of the most amazing stories from today is that during this entire standoff, there was a young employee of that printing company who was hiding, and the attackers didn't even know he was there. His name is Lilian. He's a graphics designer. Then, the police say, the 2 brothers, the suspects, decided enough is enough. They came out guns blazing. That's when they were killed by police, and Lilian was able to come out of hiding.
The whole harrowing ordeal began 2 days ago with that brazen assault in broad daylight on a beloved satirical newspaper that has long skewered radical Islam and other religions. The aftermath of that attack caught on camera the gunman racing out, shooting at police and shouting, "Allahu Akbar, God is great." And witnesses say, we avenged the Prophet Muhammad.
When you look at the tight cluster of the bullet marks on the windshield of the police car, they have a very tight cluster of shots right at the target. They're not shooting wildly. These are people who know what they're doing.
In all, the gunmen killed 12 innocents in cold blood, and police mounted a citywide manhunt. They finally tracked down the Kouachi brothers with a crucial piece of evidence, one suspect's ID, left behind in the back seat of this black Citroën, abandoned in the aftermath. But tonight, authorities are still piecing together the motive and the means. Who were these gunmen? Were they acting alone?
It certainly looks like there was some degree of coordination. So that would suggest we're talking about a cell. It might be a small cell, and we may have now wrapped up that cell, but it's quite possible that there are other individuals involved.
Late today, Al-Qaeda's branch in Yemen claimed it directed the gunmen in a statement sent to the Associated Press.
Alhamdulillah.
And in a separate audio statement posted on YouTube, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula leader Harith al-Nazari called the gunmen a group of God's faithful soldiers.
ونصرت عبادك المجاهدين.
At least one of the three attackers traveled to Yemen for training in 2011.
It's really hard to track everybody. You know, one of the problems that this highlights is that there are a number of people who are inspired by the propaganda that comes out of Al-Qaeda in Yemen. The same is true of ISIS in Syria and Iraq.
But this was an attack that targeted everyone in France, indeed France itself. The French are a free people who will not bow to pressure, and they will defend their ideals, French President Hollande declared, a sentiment felt by leaders around the world.
The world's seen once again what terrorists stand for. They have nothing to offer but hatred and human suffering. And we stand for freedom and hope and the dignity of all human beings. And that's what the city of Paris represents to the world.
Back in the U.S., FBI and Homeland Security officials sent a bulletin to 18,000 police agencies warning about the threat of homegrown radicals and the need to stay vigilant. Authorities' attention is now turning to big questions tonight. Why weren't these known terrorists being better tracked by French officials? And are there more accomplices? But with the sieges now over, even while the manhunt for Hayat Boumediene continues, Parisians can begin the recovery and grieving process. The first signs of their resilience are already on display for all the world to see. The Charlie Hebdo staff are defiantly back at work on next week's issue.